Number one bloke I know, Denan Kemp.
Number one bloke, you know.
You like that one?
I like that one. So when it comes to trying new things, I've always just been of the mind that you just got to be so good at something, they're forced to respect you. I just want to say, I reckon I could have gassed him when I was at my
You
peak.
reckon?
Yeah.
That's a big call.
If you're an NRL player, you are tough.
Yeah.
It is that simple. God made me aerodynamic to be fast. Would have I scored the parachute if I didn't have this beak? Absolutely not. What would you do if you couldn't fail is always a question you need to ask yourself.
We've got really deep in that rabbit hole. Your legs are looking really smooth, eh?
Bro, I got some of the best legs in the game. Pound for pound, seriously. I used to call myself the pound for pound king of the Broncos, just quietly, but it's all right. That's an exclusive too. That's exclusive.
How good?
No one knew that before I just said it.
Oh, I feel so special. Welcome back, everyone, to the Let's Trot Show, episode 8. And with me is the number one bloke I know, Denan Kemp. How's it going?
Number one bloke, you know.
What?
Holy.
You like that one?
I like that one.
You like that?
Feeling very good.
How you been?
My missus called me an absolute loser as I walked out the door, and I walk into this compliment. It's the best.
Why did she call you a loser?
She didn't. She was taking care of the baby. I just made that up.
Bit of GST.
Yeah,
I don't
bit of
mind
GST.
it. What have you been up to?
Mate, just working. Funny, the season ended and I was kind of like, all right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to smash out heaps of player interviews, because what I try to do is like prioritize like analytical content during the season. Then in the off season, I do the interviews when the boys are a bit more relaxed, and I thought, okay, so it'll slow down a bit, but it really hasn't slowed down at all. Maybe even doing more. So, but you know, I'm doing a lot of something I love rather than a lot of something I hate, and that's a win for me.
Exactly right. And you're the one bloke that I know has so many fingers in different pies at the moment. Who do you got next coming on your show?
I've got Matty Johns this Friday.
Oh, that'll be cool.
That's an exclusive too. That's exclusive.
How good?
No one knew that before I just said it,
Oh, I feel so special.
except for my producer. So just so you know, I'm not trying to give you something back. But coming on my show all those years ago when I set up materials in your lounge
I was
room.
about to say, you got there before me. So how ironic that, you know, obviously I'm kicking off my podcast journey and you're one of my first guests. And I did the same with you, what, 7 years ago?
I'll never forget. And you know what stands out for me the most is we were just talking, I think, after the podcast, and I'm not sure whether it was your manager or whatever at the time, but they hadn't even got new sponsor boots yet. And I think you were like playing for New South Wales, or you were killing it.
I think
And it
that's right.
infuriated me that one of the the best players in the comp couldn't even get sponsor boots. And I just remember that so vividly, of like getting so angry about it.
I remember the introduction you gave me, one of my all-time favourite wingers, that, you know what, after that, you could have asked me anything you wanted. But what about that? Your journey in podcast world, like you're one of the first to do it. And as a footy player, you know, once you kind of step out of that circle and you're doing something different, it's very easy to get judged. What was that like for you in that transition?
Yeah, look, I've always have been of the mind, and look, I had I guess during school and growing up, got bullied quite a lot, and not in a way where I was like a victim. Like I would always be able to stand up for myself. But I did get bullied quite a lot, and basically what would happen, I'd get bullied for a few years, and then we'd fight physically. Then it would stop. We'd become friends again. Bullied, fight, stop. It just a natural circle of life, if you will. So when it came to like doing things like stepping out of your comfort zone, like for example, playing soccer and deciding to play league, like it's almost a stupid decision.
I went through the same
looking back.
transition.
Yeah. And so when it comes to trying new things, I've always just been of the mind that if you just got to be so good at something, they're forced to respect you. So whether you like me or hate me is kind of irrelevant. Not that like I'm walking around going, I don't care about what people think. I do care about what people think. But at the end of the day, I'll find solace in the fact that whether you love me or you hate me, you got to respect that there's high quality content being created. Now, if you think that's not true, then fair enough. That's also your opinion. But I've always been of the mind that if you be the best you can be in something, you'll get the respect, and then love comes after that.
I love that.
Thank you.
That was really powerful.
Was that powerful?
That was pretty powerful.
Damn.
Well, thank you
Start a
so
podcast.
much. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And before I get carried away, our friends from SHOEGRAB got you a little gift.
Oh, stop it.
Are you a bit of a sneakerhead?
Good friends. Mate, I tell you what, I'm not a sneakerhead in the normal sense of like rolling around in Air Jordans and that.
Yeah.
Do you call them Air Jordans still, or you just call them
Oh,
Jordans?
we're calling it Jordans. I'm looking at your shoes now. Like they look like a bit dated. Thank God.
Exactly. But I will say I absolutely love joggers. So these bad boys.
Oh, how good's
Stop
that?
it.
How good's that?
I'm actually wearing white ones right now, and they're all dirty. Whereas these look fast, man.
What are you doing every Friday? You want to share that?
Every Friday, well, every day.
Is it every day?
I go for a jog every day.
Do
and
ya?
I've been feeling fast lately, but now feeling very fast, and also kind of hot too.
It is perfect time for it. Perfect time.
I'm feeling fast and hot. They're the two best combinations you could feel as a bloke.
Well, they'll definitely see you,
Massive
brother.
thank you, SHOEGRAB. Nah, SHOEGRAB are awesome. They're actually a partner of Bloke podcast.
Yes.
Massive supporters, and we're supporters of SHOEGRAB. So I tell you what, the missus might not let me out of the house in these bad boys.
I'm pretty sure I was one of the first ever customers of SHOEGRAB. I'll double check with that after the show with Jay, but he's gone on quite the journey, man. So shout out to SHOEGRAB.
Best in the business, baby.
100%. Where do you go for your jogs?
I'm not going to tell you that. It's private.
I'll tell everyone.
Look, people that see me run past are like, but it's not private. It's in a public spot. But it's a mentally private moment for me. So like, I'm the beak to everyone else, but when I'm running, I'm just Denan.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm just Denan. I just want to be Denan. You know, just
well,
an
it makes
anonymous
sense.
guy with a big nose running down the street. I don't want to be the beak. You know what I mean?
Have you ever considered getting a nose job? Has it ever been?
of course it has.
Has it always been like a bit self-conscious? Have you ever been self-conscious about it?
Are you serious? Of course. It's called the M&M theory. And what the M&M theory is this, is if you just insult yourself, they got no ammo, baby. I've taken the ammo out of your gun,
That's so
baby.
true.
What are you going to do? I just call myself a big-nosed loser. What else you got on me? Nothing. Thank you. Yeah, of course. Definitely self-conscious about it. I think that, to be honest, and like all jokes aside, that there is a part of that. If you just banter with yourself, then people kind of just go, yeah, sweet. But there's also like, I do want listeners, if they're self-conscious about something, just be forthright with it and just accept it. This is who you are. This is what you look like, for better or worse. And if you can joke about it yourself, it softens the blow when people say things.
100%.
Now, I tell you what, randoms calling you like, oh man, your nose is bigger in person. Like that still stings a little bit because I don't even know you.
That is pretty harsh.
Yeah, but it's all in good fun and I as I said, in all seriousness, people with whether it's big ears, big nose, whatever it is, whatever you've got an insecurity about, everyone's got an insecurity about something. Like the most beautiful women in the world don't think they look good. They think they look fat, or they think they, are ugly, or this or that, or they don't like their eyebrows. Or every single person.
That's the problem with society. Like we're always chasing perfection, and unfortunately, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, and we're kind of always kind of sold to of you need this thing to replace something. This thing will make you better. And so yeah, like to my listeners, I always want them to feel like, okay, this I feel insecure about this, but it's just who I am, and it's okay. Have a bit of a laugh about it. Embrace it. It's part of who you are. And that's why basically there was a comment called, there's a comment years ago, the People's Beak. And so I saw that and I thought it was funny. I thought it was great because I am the People's Beak. I'm leading from the front, baby.
We should make a team. Oh, the best beaks going around in the game.
So, you know what it is, though?
I reckon I got a decent one.
Mate, you know what it is, though? It's God made me aerodynamic to be fast. So it's like a benefit.
100%.
Would have I scored the para-try if I didn't have this beak? Absolutely not.
We've got to beat that up.
So, yeah, I saw a comment called the People's Beak, and I just was like, just embrace it, bro. Like, call yourself the Beak. Yeah, now people love it.
When you first start, like you're obviously one of the first pioneers to step into the world of podcasts.
Well, in rugby league.
In rugby.
league.
Well, I should say in sport in general. Like there wasn't many sports podcasts going around. So you have definitely illuminated the path for a lot. How did you step into that?
Basically was working a job out in Maroolin, which is an above ground mine. And I have always been a consumer of content. Now, back then, this wasn't called content.
No,
you didn't call it. It was just like, radio or whatever. And so even when I was quite young, I used to play video games a lot. Basically, I would play sport all week and then I'd just go home and play video games. We didn't actually have reception at our house for free-to-air TV. And so that gave me we don't have free-to-air TV. When I get home, what do I watch, what I do? I loved video games at that time. And that was my introduction to the internet. And I almost brought up on the internet to a degree. And, I was there in the early days, your LimeWire days, your Winamp days.
How good was LimeWire? That's so nostalgic.
And so MSN, ICQ, a lot of people won't know that, but the old message, ICQ used to come through and be like, trust me, there's going to be about 3 people listening to this podcast that are going to go, holy crap, I remember ICQ. You used to be at school all day and there'd be a girl that you have a crush on. You literally wouldn't speak to her all day and you'd only speak to her on ICQ. And then you'd see her in the school the next day, wouldn't speak to her, go on ICQ.
That was similar like MSN, but...
MSN as well, MSN as well. Anyway, so yeah, grew up on the internet. So I'd always been really... I'm a big believer that gaming is usually at the forefront of content. And I think it's been true for quite a while now. And yeah, so I've always been into content in that extent. I actually was going to start a YouTube channel in 2011.
Wow.
And I just didn't do it because I was playing footy, and back then, could you imagine it? Could you imagine in 2011 an NRL player starting a YouTube channel?
I can't imagine it. You absolutely get sprayed. Put it that way, you won't survive.
You will not survive. I mean, they'd probably rip your contract up. Like, what is this guy doing?
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was going to start a YouTube channel. I cleaned out all my second room at the time, like a second bedroom, and was like planning this little studio, and then I just never followed through with it. Anyway, so that was like, I even have, there's a channel that I created that was going to be the channel. And yeah, I just never followed through with it. And basically I'd stayed in touch with content to a degree, quit footy around 13, 14, started my electrical apprenticeship. And then I was consuming a lot of podcasts, Joe Rogan, Sam Harris, Tim Ferriss were the main ones.
Yeah.
And then I really enjoyed it because, work was so monotonous. And you shouldn't do this. This is workplace health and safety. You should not do this. But what I would do is I would have, because it was so cold, you'd have to wear like balaclavas and stuff. It was freezing cold. And I'd have a beanie on and wireless headphones that would go underneath the beanie with my hard hat on. And so whilst I was working, I was just in a podcast all day, like cutting tires, pulling cable, that kind of stuff. And then I was like, man, I feel like I didn't know whether I could do it, but I was like, I just need a creative outlet. Like, this is so monotonous and boring to me. I don't enjoy any of this work. It's like, maybe if I started interviewing people, that would be fun. Be cool just to try it, see what happens. And then I was like, okay, but if I just interview people, like anyone with a good story, then I'm competing with guys like Joe Rogan, Tim Ferriss, that kind of stuff. And it sounds crazy, like competing with Joe Rogan, but you got to understand at this stage, there's barely any podcasts around. So you would be to a degree. Yeah. Now, would have I been picked up as quickly as them? Probably not. But an area where it had no competition and I had a leg up on everyone was rugby league and sport in Australia. And so I was like, well, that's my point of difference. I know the boys. Well, some of the boys, like I only played like 40 games, so it wasn't like I was a big dog either. That's my point of difference. I was like, okay, that's what I'll do. I'll interview NRL players and get their stories out there, because I always hear this kind of negative stigma around rugby league players. And don't get me wrong, we do silly stuff and we're not perfect, but
no one is.
Exactly. But a lot of fans, they just don't know the players. And so I was like, I want the fans to be able to see these people, listen to them and be like, oh, that's like, I actually kind of like that person or whatever. And yeah, so I decided I'll do that. But then I bought everything on a credit card, couldn't afford it at all. I'm on mature apprenticeship wages. So I bought everything, spent thousands of dollars. So it would have been like,
do you know how much back then?
Maybe $5,000 or $6,000. That's everything, like laptop, lighting, cameras, backdrop, so the media pop-up walls. And then I sat on it for like 6 months because I was like, oh,
shitting yourself, eh?
Should I do it? Should I not do it? And I'm the kind of person that once I start something, like, you're all in. I'm not a like start something guy and then stop it a month later. And then the first one, I was like, you know what? I've just got to go. I just got to do it. So my first ever episode was with Bo Ryan. He didn't know what a podcast was. He was a mate. He still is a mate. And it was actually, I had 2 laptops underneath the table and 2 webcams, using 2 webcams to film it. And because I love Joe Rogan so much, I actually had this like cool blue light like coming up the backdrop to make it look cool.
It's awesome.
And like you can still find the interview on the...
Now, have you seen Joe Rogan's first few podcasts?
Yeah, they're terrible. These mine are worse, trust me. And you could just like so nervous in front of the mic. I could never even interviewed anyone. That was the first time I'd ever interviewed anyone, and it was Bo Ryan. And I'm always grateful to Bo Ryan because at the time he was the man, like on the footy show. He's still killing it now, but he was on the footy show. And yeah, that was my first episode.
Well, you're kind of onto something because like the only piece of content you would get and exposure to players was through mainstream media.
Yeah.
And as you would know, when you speak to a journalist, you're not going to open up as much as you are with like someone you actually share the footy field with or ex-teammate, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
So, but there was not much. Why did you want to delve into it? Like obviously you just said it yourself, there wasn't much going around, but there wasn't much return coming back to you in terms of, obviously sponsorship, stuff like that. You have to really like get the runs on the board. So what made you stick at it?
I just believe, so from the get-go, I was like, most businesses, the hardest part is exposure.
Yeah.
Like, so whatever you're in, whether it's in, retail or whatever it is, the hardest part is the marketing. So most businesses, especially in retail, their biggest spend is in marketing. I was like, if you could create your own platform, advertise your own businesses off it, that's $0 in marketing that you could eventually be spending. And so I understood that hadn't been done before, but the internet had given us the power to do that. So I was like, why don't I build my own platform and then use my own business on it? So I said, best case scenario, it kicks off and I get to do a beer or whatever it ends up being. Worst case scenario, it just goes okay, 1,000, 2,000 downloads an episode, but I can advertise my electrical company on it. So that was the worst case scenario of, okay, it didn't really work out, but it's still, you know what, advertising to 2,000 people is for free is much better than advertising to 0 people.
True.
And luckily it worked out. Best case scenario, like we built the platform and we have this huge community that loves Bloke and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it just seemed to work.
With marketing, how do you show the value of exposure? Like a lot of businesses, there's a lot of players out there that they want to link up with brands and stuff like that, but they don't know how to kind of, how do you measure it?
Well, it just depends on what company you're dealing with. There might be some companies that just want brand exposure. So that way you go this is the numbers that we reach, this is the demographics we're hitting, it's 18 to 35 male, whatever that is. There's other companies that go, we want revenue generated, like genuine revenue generated. And a way to measure that is all right, give us a code that gives our community 10% off or free shipping or whatever it is. And that usually is a really good way to measure how successful an advertising campaign has been. I mean, there was one campaign that we had recently that 40,000 codes we used.
Wow.
And that was just in a season. So it's 6 months or whatever. That's
crazy.
Huge.
That's massive.
Huge.
Yeah.
And that's a real hard feedback of the audience listen. They listen to what we say. It's not like normal TV or whatever where when ads come on, you just kind of tune out, because you've built up the trust with that audience where you go, okay, me as a person. Would I put forward to you a product that isn't at least quality? Do I necessarily use it or not use it? Mostly I do use it. But if I don't use it, do I think it's a good product that you could use? Yeah. Very rarely am I going to get on a podcast and be like, come on, you got to go out and buy this product unless I thought it was at least decent. Or it was let's say I'm advertising something that's like a sport or whatever. I may not watch that sport, but I know that it's a decent sport that you may want to watch. But I'm not going to get on there and advertise something that I disagree with, something that I just don't think that's, right or whatever. And we've said no to things like that. And I think that as long as you keep that trust with your audience, that's much more valuable than just going, you know what, I'll sell you anything and I don't care. So yeah, that's kind of how you can show the value to brands for sure. I mean, and brands are still really reluctant, even though it seems so obvious to everyone in the pot, guys, just give it a crack. But it's going to turn, massively going to turn. It'll just be a race to whether will the brands get on board first or will the big media companies get on board first? So will the media companies your Foxes and all that kind of stuff, will they go, okay, we're losing too much brand revenue from these podcasts, we're going to go buy the podcast? Or will brands go, all right, we're actually not getting bang for buck enough from big media networks, we'll go to podcasts. So whichever happens first will dictate the future of podcasts in the country, because if brands come first to podcasting, then as a podcast, you're I don't need to sell. Why would I sell? I'm generating huge revenue and I get to own it. But if networks come first, you go, well, of course I'm going to sell. I'll get this huge chunk of change. I don't have to stress about it anymore. And then I think networks will come first because they're going to see the revenue. Because basically let's say you're a network.
Yep.
Let's say there's 10 NRL podcasts out there.
Yep.
They're growing. Let's say over the next 10 years, they'll generate, I don't know, $100 million, just as a random number. They wouldn't, but we'll just say it's a random number.
Yeah.
They've got let's say they went out and bought those podcasts for a total of $100 million and they shut them all down. That sounds insane. But you got to remember, they were going to lose $100 million. So they've essentially broken even, if not long-term.
I think long-term they actually benefit.
They're actually going to benefit.
Yeah.
Now, imagine if you buy those and you just keep them. You keep the podcast, you shut down 5 of them, you keep 5 of them that generate a lot of income. They may have spent $100 million, but they're going to make $300 million. And so it's just going to be a matter of what happens first.
How is your relationship with all the networks and big media organizations?
Really good, actually. Really good. I of course, there's parts of the mainstream media that I disagree with. I think like everyone, but I've always been of the mind this is still run by people that just like me or you, journalists, people in the media. They're just human beings trying to do their job. Yeah. Of course, there are parts of mainstream media that I definitely don't, align with. But again, there's also parts of alternative or new media that I also disagree with. So it's been really good actually, and they actually haven't really. There's been no negativity towards Bloke because we can coexist. We really can coexist. We both offer different things, and yeah, it's been pretty good, to be honest.
I feel like there's some players out there that are just so anti-media, and I feel like, unfortunately, like you can't get rid of them. They're part of the game, and they will be part of the game, you know, when I'm long gone. But I feel like they should use the media to their advantage. Like, yeah, sometimes there might be an article out there that they don't really agree with, but they can't use that one article and just be, you know, anti-media. I'm not going to talk to the media anymore, blah, 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 blah. So that is very, very, very good point.
It's tough because, like, I get it. When you get a bad story written about you, you're like, man, are you serious? Like, that's whatever.
That's ego speaking.
Yeah.
You know
but you got to ask yourself, are the media going anywhere? No, they're not. And also, the media help the game. It is just the way it is. They put in so much money into it. So you can either use it to your advantage or not use it at all, but they're still going to write the story.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
You lose regard. If you're anti-media forever, you lose. You know, and look, you might just be a footy player that's like, I'm okay with that. I don't want to build a brand, then that's fine. That's fine. But if you are looking to build your brand or your profile, you just got to kind of try to lean into it and understand that as long as there's nothing too egregious, it's part of the game. They do support the game. They spend a lot of money on it. You can't deny that. Yes, there's bad eggs, but there's bad eggs in everything.
Everything, exactly right.
Yeah, it's tough though because there are certain superstars that I do feel once you know some people in the media realize that they can generate clicks, they go boom. That's the guy. Anytime I need a story or something happens, he's the guy I use to generate the clicks. So that is sad. Like I do wish everyone could get a fair crack, and there's a difference between having an opinion and then also creating like I guess fake stress on players sometimes.
Unfortunately, just negative headlines just get more clicks. That's just the way it is.
It is. And so look, everyone can choose to do what they want, but if you want to build your brand, you're eventually going to have to accept that the media's here, they're not going anywhere, and also they do fund a lot of the game. Now, could they be better? For sure, absolutely. But it's hard to say, could the media be better when in reality it's like two or three people that are, whereas when you speak to a lot of players, like for example yourself, I'm sure there are journos that you would happily take their phone call and go, mate, he's a bit of a legend. Like he's actually a decent bloke. Is that fair?
Yeah, I've got a great relationship with the media. You know, like I think I've been pretty lucky. I've only had probably like one or two kind of articles that I didn't agree with, but I actually called those journalists and approached them about it and told them what's the go. Yeah. And after I approached them, had a chat with them, that's it. I squashed it. You know what I mean? Moved on.
Because they're human beings.
Yeah, like we moved on. Yeah. Like, and again, like I'm lucky. You know, I've only had two kind of stories, but there's other players that have had multiple.
See, that's a little bit different where you're going.
So I can't relate to that, and I understand where they're coming from, but I go back to the same thing. Look, they're going to be there regardless. Yeah. So you either try and form relationships with them and use them to your advantage, like you said. Yeah,
absolutely. So yeah, for sure. Like definitely parts of the media that we could be better at, for sure. There's absolutely no denying that. But it is what it is, you know.
So back to the podcast journey. Obviously, you laid the foundation with the Locker Room.
Yeah.
How long after that did you rebrand and call it, and the Bloke of the Bar was born?
Oh man. Okay, so would have been maybe 2.5 years, and so it wasn't like an intended rebranding. It was more. So Shandorel he messaged me and he was like, mate, I'd love to do a show with you, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, yeah, sweet, man. He's like, you know, we can talk about footy. And at that time I was like, listen, I'm probably not confident enough to be able to critique the boys without coming off like negative. I never wanted to be an ex-player that's just ripping into the boys. And you're like, hang on, bro. You were way worse than them. And then you're standing on your high horse saying how bad they are. It's like, back in your day, there were no camera phones in that. You guys, we know you were way worse. So that frustrates me sometimes when I see it. And look, not all of them do it. No. And also, there's a difference between critiquing a bloke's form and like ripping into a bloke. So if you're an ex-player critiquing form, like we critique form, there's nothing wrong with that. It's sometimes when you're just like, wow, that's a bit heavy.
Laying the boot in.
Yeah. And so I was like, I don't want to be that guy. And so I said, listen, this is what we can do. I'll edit everything. I'll film it all for you. I'll do everything for you. You just sit down and you can talk footy. And he's like, okay, yeah, sweet. And so I was like, listen, let me think of a name for the show and then I'll, get back to you. And eventually I come up with the name Bloke in a Bar. And then, started that show with Shandor. And initially it was Shandor, Dral, Yaya, and Eric Growth Jr.
Can I just say there's all wingers here? So a bit of bias there, huh?
Hey?
All these wingers, you just tossed it up.
Oh, mate.
Bo Ryan, your first player.
They're all good blokes.
We are good blokes. We just misunderstood.
Exactly. And that's what I'm trying to get the story out there, that wingers actually, footy players hang around with wingers too. Everyone says wingers hang out with footy players. Well, they're hanging around with us as well. They don't leave. Jeez, it mustn't be that bad. Anyway, so we did that, and eventually it got hard to like that because they had their own stuff going on, so it was hard to get them to do it each time. And so eventually I got to the point where I was like, you know what, Sandra, I'll jump on with you. And around that stage, I was like, you know what, I'm going to do the beer, called Bloke in a Bar. And basically, that kept kind of going for a while. And then I opened the bar and we pulled back a little bit from it because I was just so busy.
Bar on Gold Coast?
On the Gold Coast. And then I kind of started it then Sandor, he got really busy. He got busy and he was trying to build back towards getting back to the NRL.
Yep.
So then it was funnily enough, like at the start, I was like, I don't want to be critiquing the boys and blah, blah, blah. By the end of it, it was literally just me doing it. They weren't all doing it. So it was just me talking footy. And then that's how it carried through. The Bloke in a Bar was actually supposed to just be the review stuff, not the player interviews. And the locker room was the player interviews. And then, it all just kind of grew. And then Bloke in a Bar caught on as a kind of name, and it was a cool name that people could kind of relate to. And then I was just like, you know what, I'll just call everything Bloke in a Bar. But funnily enough, on Facebook, it's still called the Locker Room because I can't change the name. They won't let me bloody change the name.
Why is that?
I don't know. I've got no idea. They're too big, maybe. The page is too
The
big.
algorithms and stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. Steve Jobs reaching out from his grave, hold me back, even though he's not with Facebook, but whatever.
Did you ever consider yourself as an entrepreneur? Like,
I literally hate that word.
Why?
Because it's like,
But you are,
but it like, bro.
Don't be humble. You
No,
don't have to be.
like, I'll be arrogant as. I'll be arrogant. I'm not afraid to be arrogant, baby. But it's just like, I feel like that word's been tainted by the whole, I wake up every day at 4 a.m. and fucking do 1,000 push-ups and ice cold baths and like, you got to grind to the death. Fuck life, fuck feelings, fuck your family. That's the whole yarn. It's like, bruh, relax. You don't need to do that. Yeah, you need to work hard, but like, oh man, I was grinding 60 hours a week. Oh, bruh, go out into the mines. There's blokes and shills working 60 hours a week there's plenty of people that work hard. Like, shut up, bro.
Right?
Like, give me a break.
Yeah.
And I think you'll find not most, but the very successful businessmen and women that I have spoken to, they don't really connect with that kind of stuff. I just see myself as a guy that I'm just working. But I understand like technically entrepreneur, but I don't know. If you had said that to me 5, 6, maybe even 10 years ago, I'd go, yeah, for sure. But now it's just like so tainted with such carry on. Like, oh my God. It used to come through my feed. And look, I think that phase is over.
Yeah.
But like the whole grind till you die, shut up, bro. And like, oi, I woke up at 3 a.m. this morning. Yeah, because you went to bed at friggin' 6 the day before, bro. We all sleep 8 hours. And if you don't sleep 8 hours, you're going to die.
There is a bit of
You're going to literally die. So you can grind your dick off and you can die when you're 40. And I'll be sipping wine in friggin' Tuscany with the wife.
That sounds nice.
Sounds nice to me.
That sounds really nice.
And I get to wake up around 7 o'clock. So it's all good, baby. It's a little bit I'm being a bit facetious. I understand that like it is good for motivation for a lot of people and all those quotes and stuff. It's just not my vibe. It's not my vibe. But I do know that people find value in it. So I'm just being a bit, there's an entrepreneur listening right now. Don't like create a business to kill me.
Well, I'll spin it another way. Like obviously the hardest thing about, playing rugby league is retirement and life after footy. Like you just took that on and obviously started a great career after footy. But what kind of tips could you give for footy players that are on the verge of stepping out the door?
Or even just like people, I guess. And it always feels weird, like giving tips, like as if I've got it all sorted out. Like I don't have it all figured out. I'm still relatively new and I've only been doing this, for 5, 6 years now.
Veteran.
Yeah. Well, so what was it? 2015 started, 8 years now. But I still feel like, I don't feel like I'm the guy that has the knowledge. Whereas like if you said to me, let's speak about sport, I'd be very confident of like, I do know sport. But I guess my tip would be, what would you do if you couldn't fail is always the question you need to ask yourself. What would you do if you couldn't fail? And the answer you give yourself is probably very different to what you're actually doing. We often live in ourselves with what we think we're not capable of. And I think that's, I wouldn't say limiting mindset. It's a natural mind. It's a safe mindset. And you get advice from people and some people think that advice is negative of like, oh, make sure you finish your apprenticeship or whatever. But that's just people trying to look out for you. They want a safe environment for you to make sure that you're okay, you're taken care of. There's nothing wrong with, playing it safe. But a lot of people create scenarios in their head that don't exist. So, for example, let's say I'll just use real estate agent. Let's say you're a real estate agent right now. You're 23 years old.
Yep.
And you're like, oh, I want to try this other thing. You're like, oh, but I'll lose my job. But like, and so what? You know, okay. So you lose your job, and let's say it's 80 grand a year. You lose your job. Does that job not exist in 3 or 4 years if you give this a crack? You can't go pour beer somewhere if you need to earn a bit of extra. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many ways if you're willing to work hard to generate a bit of income. And if you go, and that was the whole, when I started my podcast, my idea was 2 years. It was 2 years to give it a crack. And it had the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario was I'd just continue my electrical apprenticeship and advertise, you know, and if that failed, I'd just go back and work. And so I think that people create, like, they fear in their head of like, oh, I'll lose my job and, you know, then I'll be out of this or I won't have this. And
It's the
like,
fear of the unknown though.
yeah. And so you just got to ask yourself, would it really be that bad? Like, let's say you walk in tomorrow and you quit your job. I'm not telling people go quit their job en masse. I actually think that you should keep your job and then work the thing on the side. But let's say you did. Is it really going to be world ending for you? Now, it's very different if you've got a family, kids, a mortgage. That's a different, you know, argument to have, for sure. But if you're a relatively young person with, you know, a partner and you just rent a place, you know, save a little bit of extra coin and then you go, all right, I'm going to start this part-time on the side. And then when I feel like I'm getting to the point where I can earn enough money, I'm just going to go all in. And if it doesn't work out, I'll go back to my old work and say, hey, you know, is there any job? If they say no, you go to somewhere else. I think just people create scenarios in their head that actually aren't reality, which is understandable because it's natural for humans to always take the easiest path of this is safe, this is what I know, I can guarantee a check coming through in the next week or 2 weeks or whatever it is. So yeah, just ask yourself, like, what would you do if you couldn't fail? And it's never as good as you think it is, but it's definitely never as bad as you think it is.
How did you do your transition from rugby league?
Yeah, it definitely struggled, but that was more around identity, like identifying as I'm an athlete. That's what I am. That's what I was put on this earth to do. And when you quit footy, and I'll be honest, like I still haven't really lost that identity. Like deep down, I identify as an athlete. Obviously, I'm not, especially if you watch me run at the moment. Bit slow.
You just say you're running awesome.
I know, but that's entrepreneur talk. I'm trying to inspire.
You have
bro.
to, exactly.
But yeah, so I don't even know what I was just saying then. I got lost in the entrepreneur flow.
I did as well, to be honest with you.
Mate.
You transitioned from footy.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, definitely struggle with identity. Like if I'm not a footy player, then what am I? What's the point of me even being here? Like this is what I was made to be. Not necessarily a footy player, but an athlete. That's just because since I was 5, like my whole life was dedicated around, during the week you train, on the weekend, everything is focused towards the game. It was soccer, obviously, till I was 17. And so when you lose that, you're like, what could fulfill me? What's my purpose? Where can I make a mark? Where can I have impact? Like, where can I feel like it's a life that I've lived, not just gone through the motions? And that was something that I really struggled with doing my electrical apprenticeship. We used to, probably the worst workmate in the history of mankind, especially for the older guys.
I hate dealing with wires. Hate it.
I wasn't a warrior. It was probably worse, actually. So we would get on site. We had to live, this Laha, so we had to live away from home in this like shitty motel. And so we'd get on work site and we had to drive 800 meters a K out in these little buses to where we were working. And I would always be like, man, there's got to be more to life than this. And the young boys would be like, yeah, bro. And then the old boys were like, man, shut up. Stop ruining our day, bro.
While you're staring out the window, just contemplating life.
Oh, man. So and I actually have a lot of respect for people that can just put that aside and go, no, I've got to earn money for my family or whatever. Like that takes a lot of mental strength. But I didn't have that mental strength. I was just like, I can't imagine myself doing this for the rest of my life. I need to do something.
But day to day, you're a rugby league player. You know what I mean? Like you're living the dream and then you went to that. So that obviously would have taken its toll.
And that's the thing that like a lot of, I guess, outside looking in, you don't realize, but every week as an NRL player, it's almost like do or die. Like every single week is like we are leading up to something hectic. Like I wouldn't say not going to war in the real sense, but going to war in the metaphorical sense of like every week is leading up to something so big. Like it's this huge achievement.
Yes.
And then it starts again the next week. And then again. So every single week you have like infinite amount of purpose. Whereas when you go into the normal workforce, usually it's longer term goals,
It's pretty stagnant.
6 months, a year, 2, 3 years. So you've got to get out of that mindset of extreme, boys going all, wherever. You walk in an office on a Monday and fucking Barry, he's been on the beers for 3 days. He can't even see straight.
It used to be like that. I believe, not now.
Like the workforce, tradie, he can keep his eyes open at the meeting at the start of the day. So that same kind of zest for what they're doing, it's just not there. So it's just different. It's very different. And so people always say, oh, what's harder, like working a normal job or footy? I say it's just so different. It's hard, the monotony of a normal job of doing the same thing every day. But the physicality, the mental pressure, the ability to just constantly be redlining all the time, that's the tough thing about NRL player.
Yeah, well, all right, you got me thinking now.
Gotta be honest, Ronald.
You're making me nervous. So why beer? What beer? Like, why do you want to come up with your own beer?
Footy podcast. What do footy fans love? Beer. That simple. Really that simple.
Are you a beer lover yourself?
I mean, I definitely enjoy beer, for sure. Yeah. But I'm not like some connoisseur sitting there going, oh, this is hops and blah, blah. No, not at all. The bloke beer is about moments. It's about making you feel good. It's about when you put that beer in your hand, it's obviously a nice tasting beer, but it's more about you put it and the boys, you're all having it together and you're just experiencing a fun moment with your mates. That's what I think beer is really for. It's about the social side of things.
Creating memories.
Exactly. There's absolutely a market, and it exists. It's huge for you want to taste different things, have a different aftertaste or a different bit in whatever it is, a different style of beer. There's definitely a market for that. But Bloke's more focused on just having a good beer in your hand, sitting down with your mates, watching sport. That's really what it's focused on.
Did you surprise yourself on how much it's kicked off?
Yeah, I guess, but it's just like footy, bro. When you're in it, you're just in it. So you're just ticking over. But when you look back, and
must be satisfying.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it hasn't been easy. It's been a slog. There's been massive up and downs, a lot of stress. But yeah, when you sit there and go, if 10 years ago I could say, oh, this is what you'll have right now, you'd be like, that's insane. Yeah. Like, what? Are you serious? One moment that like really always brings me back to that was my grandfather. He was he was quite sick and, very close to passing away. And, he couldn't believe that his grandson had a beer. And I just think that's like, it was such evidence to me of this generational gap of there's so much opportunity for us. Whereas like his generation, like to start your own beer, like that's impossible. Only rich people do that. Yeah. That's for people that have been in money forever. And it was literally, the last thing he said to me, and I shook his hand. He said, good luck with the beer. It was a good firm handshake. And then he passed away a few days later. And that always reminds me of how lucky that I am that we have a beer and we have this podcast, because the generations that came before us, they didn't have this opportunity. Like my other grandfather, he was down working in coal mines when he was 14. He drove taxis like 60, 70 hours a week just so my dad could graduate school, just so he could graduate. Like, think about that. That was his achievement, was his son graduated school and made sure that my father went to uni. And then my dad, he used to drive an hour and a half to work every morning, an hour and a half back, just so that he could afford to pay for us to do all these sporting activities. Like we didn't have it. We had to use this thing called Condi crystals. So we used to make state, go to nationals, all that kind of stuff. We didn't have any money where our parents used to sell us that spikes are for we're not old enough for spikes yet. Our muscles aren't ready for them. And so we believed them. But in reality, we couldn't afford to buy everyone spikes. So we would dip our feet in this thing called Condi's crystals. It was purple. It would harden the bottom of your feet. And then we would strap our feet and we would be running barefoot on tartan. And there's actually state titles where, like, photos of winning state titles, like my brother in bare feet with the Condi's crystals. So that's how far, like, think about the sacrifice from, my mum's mum, my dad's dad, their parents' parents, and how I have just gotten lucky off what they sacrificed. I'm the one that's reaping all the rewards. Like they're the ones that had nothing, like grinded from the bottom to where they are now. And so I think it's always really important. That always brings me back when I start to take things for granted and go, oh yeah, this is just expected. It's like, no, it's actually not. You're actually standing on the shoulders of people that went through my My grandfathers both went to war, all that kind of stuff. One of my grandfathers ratted to Broke. Like, all those things I'm reaping the benefits of. So anytime I feel like I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, I really try to just pull me back a little bit and go, hang on a sec, mate. Like, you would be absolutely nothing without much better men and women than yourself right now.
Wow. That's so deep.
Really?
Oh God, man. I wasn't,
You weren't ready for that?
I wasn't ready for that. that was awesome.
I was just caught, you know what? I was caught in a slipstream with a beak. I think we're in a slipstream right now, a big slipstream.
We've got really deep in that rabbit.
We're in a fucking big cyclone.
Anyway, I really enjoyed that. But so we've spoken about a lot about post footy. I want to talk about your playing days. Was there any club in particular that you really enjoyed playing with?
The Broncos. They have my heart. They're my first love. They gave me my opportunity. I'm quite a loyal guy too. I think, I struggle. You know what? I'm not a sentimental guy of like, I kept a hair from a chick I was with when I was 18 years old, like weirdo stuff.
That's a bit creepy.
Exactly. That's not sentimental, bro. That's creepy. If you still got your ex's fucking hairbrush,
throw it out.
Relax. And also that restraining order that's coming your way, you deserve it. But like, for example,
You broke me.
I'm so like, when I find something that I like, I struggle to like ever move on from that. So like, for example, we used to live in Alexandria, and I had a run path that I would do every day. That's the path that I'd run. And so when we moved out to Cronulla, I would drive back into Alexandria to do that path because I felt like sad leaving it. I didn't want to leave it. So that's that relates to obviously Broncos. Like, that was the first, they gave me the opportunity. Like, when you think back to it now, you're like, they brought in a guy to the reserve Broncos squad at 17, 18 years old that was a soccer player, and they knew he was a soccer player, and they still gave me a fair crack. Literally in the first year I was playing reserve grade Broncos. Like, that's, like, I didn't realize it at the time, but there's a lot of politics in rugby league.
Massive.
Who did you make state in under 16s? Did you make state in under 18s? Who's your manager? Do you have all this footage of you killing it against? I was so ignorant to that I didn't even realize that when I was getting these opportunities, there were boys around me that were pissed off because they're like, we don't even know who this guy is.
You're an outsider.
Yeah, he's never played footy growing up, didn't make any of the state sides, not in any of the systems. We can't even look to who was his club team. And so I didn't even realize that was happening. That was pissing people off because they were going, mate, I'm in QIS, I'm in this, I'm in that. And he's literally getting the resis before me. And then a year after that, I'm playing NRL.
That's
and so the risk or the opportunity that the Broncos gave me, and Wayne Bennett's belief, and Ivan Henjaks and John Dixon's, Michael Hancock was another big believer. Like, I'll be forever grateful for that. Forever. They had no right to give a soccer player the time they did, and so I'll always be grateful for that.
Why did you transition to rugby league from soccer?
Well, so I was playing soccer, very seriously. So I used to play with Dario Vidicic. He's obviously we used to make state together, all that kind of stuff. And I was at the Brisbane Raw. I think what they used to call the Brisbane Lions. And then they changed to the Raw because they went into the A-League. Anyway, so a year before the A-League, I was 16, I think, and I was at the Brisbane Raw. Is it Queensland Raw now or Brisbane Raw?
Brisbane Raw.
Brisbane Raw. And it used to be Queensland Lions. Anyway, Brisbane Raw. And so we were going to go into the A-League the next year. I was playing reserve grade and I was 16. And so basically I'd just gone from youth side to reserve grade kind of squad. And we'd gone away for state for soccer. I'd just been over to England for soccer as well. We'd played Man United under 16s, Leeds United, Scottish under 16s. We were all 15. We actually beat Man United under 16s when we were 15 2-1.
Shit.
Lost to European Championships at the time, Leeds United, I think 3-1 or 2-1. And we lost to Scottish national side, I think 3-1. They were much more skillful than us, but we were super aggressive and very fit. Like, I think much fitter than them. That's what made us like kind of even the playing field a little bit. But once they start getting to that 17, 18-year-olds, just all the work they do with that technical stuff, it's just a bit better now. Not to say we can't do it. Like, my brother went over there when he was 17 and got offered a contract from Norwich as a 17-year-old. So, we still have the standard here in Australia. It's just a matter of, are you willing to move overseas at a young age and have a go? Anyway, so I was obviously playing soccer seriously. I went away to a carnival with my mates at school just to get time off school to play rugby league, and that's where I got spotted playing rugby league. They basically, I won this player with the most potential award or whatever. It was just in some B comp, our front row was like 80 kilos. Like no one knew how to play. As a Broncos reward. And basically they said, oh, look, if you're with another club, because this is when you couldn't speak to anyone if you're with a club, just let us know, we won't say anything. And at the time I got the award, I was really crook, like really sick. So I didn't care. And also I had nationals for soccer, like literally a few weeks after. So I was like, I couldn't care less, like whatever. Like I was appreciative, but I was like, doesn't mean anything to me. Anyway, eventually I told my dad when I got home and he was like, oh, we'll call the Broncos and we'll just let them know what to go is. So we called the Broncos and he said to them, oh, just so you know, this kid that's got the award for player with most potential, he doesn't play rugby league. He's actually a soccer player. So we don't know what you're talking about when you say you want him to come to some camp. And initially it was like just a big squad camp they wanted me to come to. When they found out that I was a soccer player, they were like, oh, we want you out the next camp, immediate, the elite camp. And it was actually, my father somehow got onto Wayne Bennett, and that's how that all happened. Yeah, I don't know how he did it. Anyway, so when that happened, I also at school, just mucking around, had been playing some AFL. And our main sports teacher and my dad, massive AFL fans, they had reached out to AFL, and AFL had found out about this kid that seemed to be a decent athlete. And basically they sat me down and said, listen, we'll train you one-on-one as the Lions at the time, and we'll fast track you to the draft, and we'll train you one-on-one. So your option is soccer, obviously soccer, AFL, NRL. Then I went back to the Lions, and then they became the Raw. And I said to them, look, this guys, I've been offered this from the Broncos, this from AFL, and A-League. What's your thoughts on it? They said, listen, you'll play A-League in probably two years, but obviously we understand like Brisbane Broncos is a massive club. Like we can't compete with that short term, and obviously we don't know how the A-League's going to turn out. And so I was like, you know what? Like Brisbane Broncos at the time were literally the biggest sports organisation in the country. My brother, who I was supposed to follow over to England, he got really homesick and he rejected the Norwich offer, came home, which actually being the best thing to decide because he ended up getting stress fractures. He ended up playing soccer again, but he became a doctor instead.
Oh, wow.
So it's a blessing in disguise where, he's going extremely well now, like extremely well. And so that kind of ruined the dream of me being with my brother in England trying to make it. Not ruin the dream, but that was kind of the plan. And so I was like, look, I'm probably not, I don't want to go over to England by myself. The Brisbane Broncos, I had this one memory of my grandfather, of sitting by his knee, and watching Steve Renouf, and he loved the Broncos and Steve Renouf. Now, he passed away before I could debut, but that was one thing I was like, you know what, like, that's a special memory that I'm going to go to the Broncos, which is funny because my dad, massive AFL, he was like, the self-control he had to not push me to AFL is actually like record-breaking. He didn't say one word. But he would always just every now and then he'd drop the you would have been a great AFL player, mate. You'd been great for yeah, Dad. Okay, you think I'd been great at anything? Yeah. And so that's why I went to the Broncos. I guess there were some times where I missed soccer a little bit, but I moved pretty quickly, to be honest.
We were around guys like Darren Lockyer, Wayne Bennett, and the rest. Like
Petro, Webkey, Thorny, Hodjo, Kay. Yeah, craziness. Craziness.
What was that like for you?
You know what it was? It was so I wasn't ungrateful. I was very grateful. But compared to how much I should have appreciated, I didn't because I didn't grow up watching footy. I didn't know I knew Darren Lockyer and I knew that these guys were good players but I didn't know anything about rugby league. So I wasn't walking in like I was just more intimidated by the first graders rather than that's
such and such.
Because I didn't grow up idolizing them. My first book I ever read was David Beckham, Bex, blonde hair. I grew up watching Bex. Man United was my team.
I feel sorry for you.
Please give me a break. Look, a tough time at the moment. I haven't actually watched soccer in a very long time, but look, I don't know what's doing at Manchester United, but yeah, Man United were my team growing up, and yeah, so they were the team, the Fab Five or whatever. It was Giggs, I think it was Scholes, the Neville brothers, Bex.
Yep.
So yeah.
Rooney? Was Rooney there at the time?
Nah, he wasn't there yet. He wasn't there
Cantona.
Yet. He would have just been, as I was heading in, he would have just been before me, but around the same, Roy Keane, all those good boys.
Of course.
Yeah, so it wasn't, even though I appreciated it, it wasn't until I got into rugby league a little bit to realise this is like the Australian side. This is crazy. That's when I was like, wow, that's a good one. It's like anything. I think it's when you look back on your careers when you start really appreciating that was incredible.
Yeah.
How lucky was I to play with Darren Lockyer?
You don't realise at the time.
You don't because you're just in it. They're the boys. They're the boys. You're putting shit on each other half the time. instead of going, holy shit, that's Justin Hodges, you know?
That's a fucking spinner. And what made you leave the Broncos?
So basically, they said to me at the start, like a bit into the year, I was a third string winger, and I felt I was a first grader at this time, and it's just bad timing. So basically, when they said, "Oh, you're a third string winger, we've got your minimum contract," so I had my debut year, and in my debut game, I ran for it was actually the record amount of meters run for a debutant at the time, and I scored like a 75-meter kick return, all this stuff, and I took unders to stay, and was promised, okay, you'll start the year next year. And so there was a couple of years where I was taking unders out of loyalty. And then when this came around with like your third string winger, I was like, listen, I've sat around and I should have been more patient. I wish my manager at the time had said, mate, just stay. You're at the Brisbane Broncos. But he didn't, because guess what? He cares about money. Anyway, so when they said that, it was like, all right, well, if I'm a third string winger, I'll go look because I want to play first grade. So it wasn't even about, like, I was going to get paid more at another club, but not massive. Like the Broncos offered me $50K in match payments. And then I ended up getting $90K, no match payments at the Warriors. So actually, I would have got, if I stayed and I played all the NRL games, I actually would have got more money at the Broncos. But it was just to play first grade. But so what happened is at around 2 or 3, they said that. And I hadn't really been given, and I played really good in my debut year before, but I hadn't been given enough games to show what I could do. Then I started playing I'd already been playing well, but I continued to get better and better and better. Then all of a sudden, the tune changed of like, oh, we've got no salary cap money, whereas before it was like, oh, we've got no salary, all that kind of stuff. But I'd already verbally agreed through my manager to the Warriors. And so I just felt, even though I was getting much bigger offers from other clubs, substantially, I'd verbally given them my word. Hadn't signed anything, hadn't even seen a contract, but I said yes via my manager, and I wasn't going to go back on my word. And if I could have gone back easy and said, like, no contract was signed, it was just a verbal yes, and I could have stayed at the Broncos, because by the end of the year, they were like, we want you to stay, blah, blah. I mean, Wayne even sat me down and said, I'm not sure what's going on with the Warriors situation or the Broncos, but if you want to come to Dragons, you can come to Dragons with me. But yeah, as I said, I'd already given my word to the Warriors, and that's why I went to Warriors.
Yeah, wow, far out. Do you regret it?
Well, then I wouldn't maybe not be where I am today. So it's like, would you trade the chance of not having what you have today, beautiful wife, beautiful kid, relatively successful or whatever, would you trade that to, first of all, break your word, which was not going to happen? Maybe play some more NRL, maybe not. You don't know. I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, no. I think you made the right choice, brother.
Thanks, bro.
I want to ask you a few fan questions.
Oh, fan questions.
If that's
I
cool.
didn't know how
how many times are you on that end of a podcast?
Hey?
How many times are you on that end of the podcast?
I don't know.
Do you do much of them, like with other?
I mean, I don't know, maybe 10 different podcasts I've been on, and I've been on other podcasts twice, but like being interviewed like this, oh yeah, maybe 10. I don't know.
Yeah, wow.
Not that many.
Okay.
Not that many.
All right. Well, our first question from Glenn from Perth.
Okay.
Aroused.
Oh yeah. Good stuff, baby.
Heard you were coming on Let's Trot and have to drop some love for the GOAT podcaster. How in the fuck did you come up with the now famous aroused angle?
Well, I was always like,
I want to know that question. Yeah, that's a question for me too.
I just always found it funny that it didn't actually mean just sexually. So I was always like, it just means excited.
Yes, yes.
And that was just, I used to say it in jest because it would throw people off. Like, people are like, what the hell? Like, he's talking sexual.
Yes, yes.
But in my head, I'm like, the joke is it's actually not. So got you one. And that's just why I would say it, would just to take the piss out of people, because I'd see them go, what the hell?
I would have done the same thing. Adam from Sydney. Watch your shows since day one. Off the top of your head, who did you have the most fun interviewing, or was the most surprising?
Oh, man. That is tough.
That is tough.
Well, I mean, look, interviewing Darren Lockyer was pretty cool because he doesn't do this kind of stuff.
Yes, yes.
Gus School was a spin out.
How did that come about?
Just through Channel 9.
Yeah.
Yeah. But one that really shocked me was James Seguiaro's story. His story was like, it really just like, wow. Coming from PNG, relatively wealthy initially, and then his father lost a lot, comes over, lives in Australia with, I think, foster parents, but had no, I think at one point they didn't even have money to send them to school. I'm not sure if it was the foster parents or his whatever, but at one point he literally used to watch kids go to school and he'd be jealous of them. And I just thought, far out, just makes you put things in perspective of how lucky we are.
Yeah.
That really was like something that was like, wow.
That's pretty powerful. Lucky last. Josh from Penrith. Love your work, legend. When are you going to get Let's Trot, myself and Fox, on Bloke for an epic episode?
Mate, whenever they want. Mate, the boys are hard to get. Superstars.
I want them to decline.
Mate,
I never turned you
mate,
down.
I had to speak to 3 assistants just to get to Joshy before the show here.
You were a hard man to get a hold of. I know you're very successful these
Mate,
days.
I walked in, I hadn't even spoken to you. You had like 4 assistants, 3 coffees around you. I mean, tell you what, ordering people around, you're good at that.
That's a lie. That's such a lie. Are you aroused by the studio?
Mate, I am aroused by the studio. Jesus, it's like the lighting's perfect. It's mate, I tell you what, it's better than my studio in regards to it probably costs more.
Well, the team I won it yesterday do a hell of a job, so thank you, team. A couple questions for you again. True or false questions?
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Can we do dare as well? Might get a bit frisky.
Maybe later,
Okay,
if we have time. Well, speaking of truth today, me and Fox got a bit of a bet going on, and we have to jump over a plane. You want to jump
Is Fox going to be on the podcast regularly this year or not really?
Well, he's pretty busy. It's pre-season, but I think so.
Eventually?
I think so.
I just want to say, I reckon I could have gassed him when I was at my
You
peak.
reckon?
Yeah.
That's a big call.
Foxy, speak to me, baby.
Do you have any footage you can show us?
I don't carry it with me, but I'm sure I could dig something up from the archives.
Oh, please send it through because I definitely want to see it.
I reckon I got you, Foxy.
It's a big call. Fuck. He's burnt me a couple of times, but we won't talk about that.
Obviously not now. Like, I'm not saying let's have a race now. This is just for content, to be honest. I'm just throwing it out there to give you guys some content.
Just bait everyone. True or false? Darren Lockyer is your top 3 players you played with.
100%. Well, best player ever I've played with, for sure. I'd argue he's a goat. He's a goat.
What makes him the best?
So you've got all the normal stuff, all the wins, the premierships, 4 or 5 premierships, whatever it is. You've got all that stuff that everyone knows. But I think a key difference with Lockie is you could argue he's the GOAT in 2 different positions. Fullback, 5'8".
Yeah.
Obviously won premierships, 2 different positions. I know GI did that as well. But I think like out and out GOAT, it's just hard to go past Cam Smith with what he did. Like,
it's crazy.
It is hard to go past that.
Playing in the middle.
Playing in the middle, 400 plus games.
Being in a spot for 120 kilogram fucking forwards.
Bro, he was around that Origin series like dominance before it.
Yeah.
That's how long he was at the Melbourne Storm before Bellamy. You know what I mean? That's crazy. So yeah, like Lockie, Smithy, and obviously Joey on his day. I wish we could have seen Joey head into his mid-30s, as in 31, 32, 33. Because imagine him with the science of today, with his body all right. Look at all the best halves in the comp at the moment, other than obviously Cleary.
Cherry Evans.
They're all a little bit older.
Mm.
I would love to see Joey go. But Joey on his day, I don't think there's anyone that can play better rugby league than Joey on his day. I think when he's at his best, you just can't get better rugby league than him. But career-wise, I think he goes Smithy. But then, yeah, Lockie, just the fact that it's 2 different positions, I think is massive.
I'm actually have to pick up the paper to read this one because it's a pretty long question.
Okay.
True or false? Your injuries as a footy player may have been the biggest blessing in respect to your overall career.
No, definitely not. No, injuries definitely didn't help my career.
But going through them, the resilience you had to go, to get through the other side, recovery.
I was always pretty. Injuries weren't ever my issues. I never really had. I had shoulder Rico, but I never got rattled from it.
Okay.
Yeah, no, the actual mental side of getting through injury wasn't hard. It was more actually the mental side of, what's the word? Basically dealing with injuries, but dealing with the biggest issues I had with injuries when I broke 6 ribs and my lung collapsed. And it was dealing with being too keen to get back too quickly. And so basically you have to put the brakes on yourself. But then also it was dealing with staff telling me if I don't get back, as if I can play this week, it's just a pain management thing. And I was always trying to tell them, no, something's wrong. This isn't right. This is with my broken ribs. And so I was communicating with them, but then there was a feeling of I'm just being soft, which I get. You're in this hard spot because no one gets on a footy field and they don't have injury. But the biggest struggle I had with injury was for the whole year I kept coming back from these broken ribs. I'd get needled. The needle would wear off in like the 60th minute, and then I'd just be in agony.
Yeah.
And they kept kind of implying like, mate, you're just gonna have to push
Toughen
through
up.
this. By the end of the year, I put my foot down and said, no, I need every scan you can get because there's something still wrong. Anyway, we did every scan, did a CT scan. Eventually, it showed that I still had broken ribs. That was the biggest struggle of like them thinking that I'm just carrying on when I wasn't. Like I was literally trying to get back with cracks still in my ribs.
That would infuriate you.
Yeah, and like I'm not a top dog player that gets to just roll back into first grade. I'm out at a Q Cup field getting needled up and dying in the 67th minute, and just that roller coaster of like, mate, you feel like you're crazy. You feel like that you're being soft. You're like, oh, maybe I am soft. Like maybe I don't have the ticker that all these other NRL players have. And then finally getting that scan and going, hang on a sec. Like, no, I am tough. Like I've been playing with these ribs, and even when I broke the 6 ribs and the lung, like, look, I know people like to make jokes, footy players and that. If you're an NRL player, you are tough.
Yeah.
It is that simple. I don't care whether you think that they're the softest or whatever, or they whinge or complain or stay down. I guarantee you any NRL player is tougher than probably 90% of other sports in the world.
There was a study that every NRL game is equivalent to a small car crash.
100%. Like every run is nearly a car crash. And so anyone's like, oh, he's soft, he's this. It's like, bro, you just don't know. Because you're just seeing the 80 minutes. You're not seeing what happens in preseason,
Prep.
all that kind of stuff. So that when we're talking about like struggles, I didn't really learn much from that because I felt like, I could have maybe communicate better, maybe more firm, maybe believe more in my own body. That's probably what I could have learned. But outside of that, it was, the toughest stuff for me in my career was more dealing with, going to the right club that could suit me, contract stuff that didn't work out properly, and then dealing with that by falling out of love with the game instead of just going, you know what, I'm going to go play reserve grade. Even though I've been hard done by here, I'm going to go play reserve grade and just bide my time. Just all the off-field politicking stuff. Every footy player goes through it.
Yeah.
I think that not fringe, but because I wasn't necessarily a fringy, because when I was playing my best, I was one of the a better winger. But when you're a guy that isn't a big superstar winger that's playing international, and if you play 3 or 4 bad games, your spot's under pressure.
Yeah.
If you're that kind of level of player, you're almost constantly fighting for contracts, almost constantly being screwed around and told that there's no money in the cap.
Constantly looking over your shoulder.
Yeah, for sure. And so that was the stuff that I just wasn't ready for. I didn't realize, like, for example, the move to the Warriors. If I was in league from a 6-year-old, whatever, I would know, mate, like, you're at the Brisbane Broncos. To even be in this side after they've just won a premiership is insanity. Just be patient. It's like, how many players do we see at Penrith now that are young and you go, mate, just stay there.
Yeah.
That's the position I was in. On top of that, I'd only been playing league for 2 years. And no one told me, bro, the Warriors, even though it's a beautiful country, it's a great team, you are not ready in your rugby league journey to be in another country at a club that notoriously Aussies do struggle with to go there. But no one said that to me. And so I still made all my own decisions, but that I do wish I had some guidance in that department that was like, mate, just be patient. I was 21 years old. Like, as I said, playing footy for 3 years. Why was I so quick to get to 100 games? I don't know. So that was the mental side that if I could go back again, I would look at. But I can say that now. At the time, I just didn't have the information that I needed.
Well, speaking of the Broncos, you're obviously a Broncos fan. How did you find they went in 2023?
Yeah, it's
Just
tough.
fell short, obviously.
Yeah, it fell short. Look, a lot of people go, you're devastated, and they lost it by they had the lead by a record margin, and Cleary caught up. But I look at it differently. Like, obviously devastated. Obviously we lost. There's no denying that. But comparing it to 2015, the reason why I can stomach this more than the 2015 one is the 2015 one actually wasn't that high quality of a game for a lot of it. It was a good game, more of an exciting game. And so that's where I feel like Broncos really could have put Cowboys away. Whereas if you have a guy that's probably going to go on to be an immortal in Nathan Cleary, and when I say probably, I don't mean just randomly probably. When you look at what he's achieved already and you compare it to potential or current immortals, it is equal to. So at the very least, he's going to go down as a Hall of Famer. If it takes him to produce the greatest ever performance of 20 minutes of a 7 in a grand final ever, plus the Penrith Panthers to complete at 97%, plus the Penrith Panthers at the peak of their powers. Like they've been together for 4 years. They're the best they've been. If it takes them to beat us, so be it. That's footy. That's footy. Sometimes you get up against a side. If you actually look at the stats, Broncos would have beaten 75% of other teams they played in the grand final. We just got up against one of the greatest ever sides assembled. Like that Penrith side is one of the greatest rugby league sides ever assembled in the NRL and rugby league.
I agree.
And we got done by, a few minutes. I can cop that.
Who was your premiership favourite? Do you remember?
At the start of the year, Roosters.
Roosters, okay.
Didn't that not work out? Holy.
When you look at the Roosters season as a whole, it kind of does make sense because I feel like they came into this season with a lot of expectation. They had a lot of distractions off field. The signing of Suwali, there was just a lot of noise. That's the noise that they didn't really need. And then on top of that, they had all those injuries. So I feel like they did pretty well just to even make the finals, to be totally honest.
My concern with the Roosters is that since they're back-to-back, they haven't really fired a shot. And they've got too good of a roster
I agree,
to not fire a shot. That's the bit where I'm like, I do think they need to reset a bit. And I think also they need to look at their season and look at why are they starting so poorly every year. And it's been like that since 2018. Now, they had the cattle like Cronk to kind of help them with that. I think, and Trent Robertson's come out and talked about this, that maybe they need to tweak some things. Now, they save their runs so late every year where you're going, these guys, like halfway through the year going, mate, they might finish 14th. And then by the end of the year, like, holy, they're putting a... But I just don't think that can work in today's game. It doesn't seem to be working anymore for the Roosters, so I think they need to tweak that a little bit.
I feel like as well the chopping and changing of their halves, they just didn't know where they sit. Obviously, Brandon Smith had to kind of, adjust to the Roosters system coming from Melbourne, completely different.
And Teddy had a down year as well. Not a bad year. So crazy. He's so good.
That's what's like. Everyone laid the boot in Teddy in the Origin series, but because he's been playing such a high level consistently of so many years, it's just easy to judge Teddy. But I didn't think it was that bad. I think it's more like, he didn't play bad individually, but I think it's his style of play that sometimes doesn't click. Like, for example, who are the hottest property right now as fullbacks? And then obviously not better than Teddy. Teddy's the second best fullback. Caden Ponga, Dylan Edwards.
Probably KP, Reece Walsh. You'd say 1 and 2 at the moment?
Yeah, that's fair.
They're ball playing fullbacks.
Yes.
And I think that with Teddy, that's an area of his game that because we've just getting so good at defence now, like defensive systems, if he could just tweak that a little bit, his ball playing at the back, then boom, he's back. But when it comes to like his ball running and all that kind of stuff, it's still top tier, like top tier. But yeah, he said, look, Teddy gets judged by a different standard as a compliment. It's a compliment that we say he had a down year because he is literally one of the greatest fullbacks of all time, period. There is no argument. And there's honestly... If you don't have him in your top 5 all time, I think that's craziness. Craziness of fullbacks.
I agree. And this coming season, who do you feel like might take it out? You said the Roosters, so who do you reckon now?
It is hard to look past Penrith going 4.
Is that sickening? Like 3 in a row. I being there. Like that 2020 season, I was there. That was such a unique year, obviously with COVID, and we had such an amazing run, and no one saw us coming. 2019, I think we finished 10th or 11th, something like that, and then. We come into preseason, arguably one of the toughest preseasons I've ever been a part of, and we went on this amazing run. We had this amazing belief in each other, and man, I'll tell you, like it was just so unique. Like every time we stepped on the training field, like everyone was on.
Yeah.
If it was the training field, if it was in the wrestle gym, if it was in the gym, like everyone was chasing perfection. If it was like a rep, like if someone just saw one of the teammates do half a rep, like everyone would like spot him out.
Everyone bought in.
Everyone bought in.
Yeah.
And I was there for 9 seasons, and that was the first time I actually experienced something like that. It was just such a professional organisation and team, and for me, it's no surprise with what they've done.
Yeah, it's incredible. If Broncos stay injury free,
you have to lose one to win one.
Look, I made this comment before the grand final. Broncos at a high completion rate, I believe, actually play better footy than Penrith.
I agree.
But their problem is they make so many errors. Now, you saw even in the grand final, when they started completing their sets, they put 3 tries on them like that, boom, boom, boom. And so that's the nature of the Penrith beast is like, okay, there might be some sides that can put together some good footy that's better than us, but we play 9 out of 10 all the time. So unless you can play 9 out of 10 all the time in your own standard, you're not going to beat us. And that's what makes them so good. They play 9 out of 10, at the very least 8. Like when was the last time you saw a 6 out of 10 game from the Panthers?
I don't remember.
5-6 years ago. Whereas I've seen games from the Broncos this season that are 6 out of 10.
Oh, I do remember one game actually when they lost to the Tigers in Tamworth.
There you
and,
go.
I had to shave my head.
Was Cleary playing?
Cleary played.
Cleary played?
Yeah, they were pretty much at full strength, but it was absolutely belting
There
down.
you go. One game was a 6 out of 10. But you could count them on a one hit. Like over the last 4 years, you could count probably 5 games where they've been a 6 out of 10. Every other game, it's 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10.
Yes.
And that's like to think you could complete at a 97% completion rate of grand final. Like that's when you talk about buying in, you've never seen a team buy in more than that. Literally, it is the highest completion rate in the history of grand finals. Whereas I do think that when Broncos do complete at around 85%, I do think they're the best team in the competition. But it's easy to say that. Do it then. Do it then. They didn't do it. So that's why Penrith are the greatest team. I think Penrith are the greatest team ever assembled. I think there's probably only Storm 2017 in a one-off game. But you don't play one-off games. You play seasons. So when you look at it from a season perspective, Penrith Panthers are the greatest team ever assembled.
It's a pretty crazy, pretty crazy thing to think about. Like just three wins in a row.
3 premierships in today's day and age
When you think about
is
it.
a joke.
Yeah,
Like
I know.
as I said, there might be some early 2000 Broncos sides or some 2017 Storm or 18 Roosters that in a one-off game could beat them. But over a prolonged couple of seasons and that, no one's coming close.
Well, who do you think is going to be the most improved side? I like Manly.
Yeah, I liked them last year and they really broke me heart. Really broke me heart.
I think Brooksy is going to really kick off there. I really can say that.
Well, it's. I mean, you got teams. It's going to sound silly to say they're going to be most improved, but you got a team like the Cowboys that they massively underachieved last year.
Yeah.
Eels, Rabbitohs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of teams that there's 3 teams right there that didn't make the 8 that could challenge for a frigging comp next year. So yeah, probably one of those. I think will bounce back.
I think South's not making that. It was just absolute
Crazy
injustice. Like I don't know. I can't believe it.
It's like the Broncos 2022.
That's right.
Just fell completely off a cliff.
That's right. That's right. Well, we had Latrell on our last episode.
Latrell
and
Mitch.
Yeah, we've got a little thing where we let the guests write a question for our next guest on the show, and
Okay.
you were lucky enough to get Trolls.
Okay.
So I haven't seen what he wrote.
Big all right.
Have a read of that.
Oh, here we go.
Open it up. Put it out in existence.
Okay, let's see. Don't do me like this,
We've
Chell.
had some quite interesting questions.
Don't do me like this, Chelly Mitt. I'm your #1 fan, baby. What is your anchor? Oh shit! What is your anchor?
What is your anchor?
Does he mean like what anchors me to?
Keeps you grounded.
Yeah. Okay. Keeps me grounded. Keeps me grounded. Well, I'd say like the definition for me, like what is your anchor of, I guess, keeps me happy. It's my wife for sure. For sure. She's incredible. Just creates an environment at home that, man, like, women got magic. I don't know what it is, baby. They just got magic in their hands. I don't know what it is. Tell me the secret. Do you know?
You don't think you got magic in your hands?
No, I don't. I don't. They just create an environment that is so.
They create a home. They create a home.
They
I
create a
definitely
home
believe
that is just so peaceful to go to.
Yes.
So loving and caring, and so she's my anchor in regards to just that point I can always go back to, and you just forget the world. You got someone that loves you just for you and doesn't get caught up in all the nonsense, and you know whether you're in a box, living in a box, or doing really well, she's going to be by your side. And I know that for sure because when we met, me and my wife, I was hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt.
Oh, geez.
I was sleeping on a mattress on my parents' house's floor, and they were living in their parents' house. And there was so much financial stress on the family because they used to rent out their home, and that money would go to my mum to live on because we didn't have any money. And so when I moved in there, I couldn't afford to pay rent because so she wasn't getting money. Then my dad started stressing out. And so when I met, my wife now, I was literally we had no furniture in the house, a bed on the floor, no money. And she used to fly up because she was living in Sydney, I was living in Gold Coast. And she would fly up and she'd work all week at a normal job. And just to spend some time with me, she'd work behind the bar
that's cool.
At Broad Beach, just to be with me. And so a lot of people look at her and see how beautiful she is, and they go, "Oh, she's only with him because he's successful." Now I'm like, nah.
She saw the darkest side of
She
me.
was there with the darkest times. No money. I mean, I used to have holes in my shoes because we had no money to buy new shoes. That's how much money the bar owed when I took it over, because I didn't owe money when I took it. Had money before, and then I took it over and I took on that debt. And so we were struggling massively. So like a lot of stress. And so when I met her, I said to her, they're richer men than me. They're richer men than me. They're better looking men than me, but no man will give you a better life. And boom, now we are married. So she's my anchor in regards to happiness. My anchor in regards to keeping me grounded. Just remembering the people before me that are much better men than me, men and women.
Touched on that before. Your grandparents, for example.
Absolutely. Reminding yourself, hey, as I said, my grandparents went to war for this country. So how dare I think that I'm some kind of hero? That keeps me grounded.
That's pretty powerful, brother. Well, now you got the opportunity for our next guest. So,
okay.
Pen's there, piece of paper's there. Yeah, that's all right.
Do you know who your next guest is?
We do. So you want to know?
I want to know.
I can't tell everyone. It's a bit of a secret, but I'll tell you. Come over here.
Okay.
What do you reckon?
Okay.
Too interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah,
Mate,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
hooked. You got me.
Well, your next guest is pretty cool, Matty Johns.
There's exclusive. Okay. I'll do it to just one. Question to one.
Go.
Okay.
Don't tell me it. Leave it as a surprise. Your legs are looking really smooth, eh?
Bro, I got some of the best legs in the game. Pound for pound, seriously.
I thought I did.
Pound for pound. They're not the biggest, but when it comes to like ratios,
evasiveness, speed, agility.
Just everything. They got everything about them. Like they're not that big, but pound for pound, powerful. I used to call myself the pound for pound king of the Broncos, just quietly, but it's all right.
Around that crew too. Fucking the nerve. Thanks heaps, brother. I really appreciate that. So what's next?
Today or in life?
In life.
Basically, just just keep going on the podcast. Got some ideas there. We don't really need to add shows. Got a lot of shows, but there may be some. For example, merchandise. We do a lot of merchandise, obviously, but we're going to up our game. We're going to step our game up.
I like that.
We're going to watch the movie Step Up, and then step up.
I'll join you.
We're gonna like the merchandise. We're gonna make it like it's still gonna be the same kind of merchandise, but just a bit better quality. So when you get it, it's a bit better experience, and also the materials and everything are going to be a higher quality than what you get right now. We're just gonna spend at the moment the merchandise more like, oh, that's fun. Let's put it there. I'm just gonna spend a bit more time in really developing that side of the business. That's a key. Plus, there's something else it's pretty big that will come. Hopefully mid-year when it comes to business.
Beautiful, man. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Best of luck going forward, and until next time.
Boom. Dunskies.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in on Let's Trot Show. I hope you enjoyed that one with Denan Kemp. Make sure to hit that 5-star button, give us a follow, subscribe, and we'll see you next week.